Esmitelite purtar leku misulitu parimu ponlan. Esula iritu. Ezan lenkwa lukuata parpupuli tuplutu. Mikaritu leku takaute reku. Yes, that's my Conlang, Erythian. By the way, a Conlang is a constructed language, meaning it's a language that people invent. It's not something that was born natural. An example of that would be the Lord of the Rings languages. So today I'm going to tell you everything about it and the process of creating your own language. It's actually easier than you think, so stick around. Also, I'm going to leave the checklist below in the description. You'll have a couple of options there to get it. Now, the first thing you need to do is to decide what your language is for, the purpose of your language, so to speak. For a Conlang, this can fall under one of these four categories. It can be an auxiliary language like Esperanto, which is designed for global communication. It can be an experimental language. If you're interested in linguistics, you might want to apply or explore a set of linguistic theories through your language. It can just be a personal language if you just want to have fun. But I created what they call an artistic Conlang, similar to the languages of the Lord of the Rings. So the purpose of my language is for it to be part of a fictional world. In my case, the speakers of my language are from Pluto. Why Pluto? I think they can finally be a planet. If there are people living on it and speaking a native language, I think that can really give them a shot. Now, we need to have sounds for the language. If it's not going to be a sign language, we need to do a phonemic inventory, deciding which sounds are present in the language and which aren't. Since I wanted to keep it simple, I decided on these sounds. So my language has 4 vowels and 10 consonants. The Erythian vowels sound like the Spanish vowels A, E, I, U, and the consonants sound like English without the aspirations in P, T, and K. The other thing is the R sound is a trilled R. Now we need to do something called phonotactics, which is which letters can sit next to each other and which can't. Like in English, there are about 400 zero-hit combinations for letter pairing. In Erythian, I'm not going to allow 3 consonants to sit next to each other, but I'm going to allow diphthongs with my vowels like these ones. Now we need to have a writing system. I wanted my language to have that alienish type of look, so I went on this website and found an alphabet called Osage. So this is where most of my characters come from, but you can draw your own characters if you want to. Let's say you want to write an alphabet for the squared people. You could have a script that looks like this. And for a language based on the constellation of stars, you can have an alphabet like this. So the Erythian alphabet sounds like this: A, E, I, U, Pa, Ta, Ka, Mu, Nu, Ri, Sa, Li, Vi, Za. Now you need to have a grammar. These are gonna be the basic sets of rules that we have. Also, remember to not stress about it. Just write down things you'd like to have in your language. Like all languages, your Conlang will be a living organism that's gonna evolve over time. So you don't have to get everything right. The first grammatical component that I built was the personal pronouns. I decided that I would have 2 third personal pronouns, masculine and feminine, and 1 non-personal pronoun. I've also decided that these pronouns are personal pronouns, object pronouns, and possessive pronouns at the same time. For instance, the word that I have for love is suva, so I love you is misuvaleku. Now let's talk about word formation. One thing to understand is the idea of inflection versus isolation. When I use the past tense of the verb walk, for instance, that's inflection. Same thing when I use the plural form of the word cat. But when I use the future tense of the verb walk, that's isolation, because I use a marker, a different word, to change the meaning of the word. In my Conlang, I'm using more isolation, but for the plural form, I'm using inflection. So to translate tree, I use the word kata, and the plural form is katana. Same for book, which is nipa, and books is nipan. Now would be a good time to come up with the numbers in order to experiment further with the plural forms. In Erythian, these are the basic numbers: nusa, para, te, mira, raku, lupi, seku, vanu, zati, net, kisu. So I'm gonna use tons of inflections here as well. So for 11, it's gonna be kisu para. For 12, it's gonna be kisute. I'm gonna keep the same base 10 for 20 and just flip the order tekisu. 30 is gonna be mirakisu, and so on. I'm only gonna use a different word when I get to 100. So now if I wanna say I have 50 books, that will be Miri lupi kisu nipan. So after you have all the grammatical rules down, it's time to develop a lexicon, to build a vocabulary for a language. For Erytheian, what I did was using loan translations from Latin and Greek. So essentially, for every word, I take a root word and adapt it to the spelling and scripting of my Conlang. For instance, for water, I would take the Latin word aqua and translate it into aku. And then I would use specific suffixes. For the plural form, I would add na, so akuna for waters. If I want to say lake, I would use the suffix so to indicate a large body of water. And if I want to turn it into an adjective, like aquatic, I could use the suffix nari to make the word akunar. So this root-based system is one way to create new words for a language, but you have other options as well. You can use compound words. For example, in my Conlang, kata is tree and nipa is book. I could have the word kata nipa, meaning wooden book. You could do some semantic shifts as well, like raku originally means four, but I could extend it to mean something like stable when describing a four-legged object or furniture. Another thing you could do is take sounds in the real world and adjust them to the spelling and phonology of your language. So for my Conlang, tak or tak-tak can mean knock or knocking. Rumpu can mean thunder. Vau-vau can mean bark, and so on. You could use a fixation to modify the meaning of a word that's already in your lexicon. You can see there's plenty of that in English. For instance, the prefix "ir" usually negates the base word. So you have regular, irregular, responsible, irresponsible. In the same way, the suffix "less" usually transforms a word into an adjective or adverb that means a lack or the absence of something. Shirt, shirtless. Bottom, bottomless. Now you need to focus on the meaning of your words and the relationship between these words. You need to decide whether you're going to have polysemy, that is, whether the words of your language will have multiple meanings, or if every single word will stand by itself. Like the word bat in English can mean either a flying memo or a piece of sports equipment. You also need to decide whether you're going to have a single word for each idea you want to express, or you're going to have synonyms, like the words begin and start in English. Or you're going to have antonyms, which are words that have opposite meanings. Well, you kind of have to do that, because if you want to express certain ideas in a language, you need to have the capacity to express the opposite of that. But how are you going to do that? Are you going to have a separate word for that, or are you going to just alter the word? Like the antonym of the word happy can be both unhappy and sad. And the antonym of the word moral can be both evil and immoral. Even when it's a constructed language, you need to remember there's always a culture behind the language. So it's time to work on some idiomatic expressions, some things that are unique to a specific culture. So in my language, I have phrases like ziraku metuna, which literally means starlight dreams. This conveys the idea of ambitious thoughts. We also have the phrase kapisu akusuli, literally translated as explore the first water, meaning to seek fundamental knowledge. Now we need to make sure that all these rules are consistent by constantly refining the language. Languages evolve, that's what they do. So don't be scared to review your language as much as possible. Your Conlang needs to be documented, meaning all these rules that we talked about need to be archived somewhere. You may have a grammar guide, a dictionary, a phrase book, complete text and translations, etc. The last step is to share your language. There are things that you're not gonna figure out on your own. So share your language on any social media platform. I know there's a subreddit for Conlang specifically. You can take advantage of that. Remember, the more speakers your language has, the more likely it is to survive.